Are you listening now?
Have you ever felt?
Are you listening? Damn.
Hi everybody, it's Joe Hicks, and this is To Your Success. My guest today is Magnus Eriksson. He's an attorney here in Scottsdale, Arizona, a very successful attorney. And Magnus, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
You're so welcome. So Magnus, tell everybody a little bit about who you are, where you come from, and sort of your background.
Okay. I was born in Sweden, and I grew up there. I came here to go to school at Arizona State University in my early 20s.
Sun Devils!
Yeah, go Devils! Not so much right now. Hopefully next year. Anyway, I was on the swim team, both the Swedish national team and the Arizona State collegiate team.
Mm-hmm. Now, what did you also go to the Olympics? Or?
I did not. I swam for Sweden at the European Championships.
Okay. Yeah, well, I've heard rumors of greatness there, so I wasn't sure.
Well, hopefully the rumors are more and ever better than they really are. Well,
so tell me a little bit about your practice. What type of law do you practice, and how you got into being an attorney?
I do exclusively criminal defense work. It really was, I think, an act of God, frankly, that I got into it. I would have never picked it in a million years. It just happened that I got my first job happened to be in a criminal defense firm, and once you teach the dog to sit, you can't teach him any new tricks. So I'm still doing it, but I think it was clearly divine intervention. I've learned a lot from it about myself and humanity.
Yeah. And you just kept going with it.
Yeah, I kept going, and just like with anything, there are good days and bad days. Probably in some ways not the most money-making part of the law that you could find, but there are niches that you can fill, and just working steadily towards improving as a lawyer in terms of how you advise people and how you make people understand the process that they're facing. And as you get more experience, you can also find more problems in the government's case than you can early on. So
you become quite the educator, don't you?
Basically, that's a good way to put it. Really, I think that trial work really is not what you see on TV, where you see sort of two minds sparring over things. It's really more teaching the jury what happened or what the law is, and presenting a different side, a different story, the accused story versus the government story, and you take it there. And I think it's true in other fields too. That's what people tell me who do civil work, that it really is not so much people sort of shouting at each other in a courtroom, but it's teaching the jury what's going on in a case.
Right. Now, interesting, and here's a fact that I just remember because I am a dog lover as well, but you have dogs that you actually train, that you have trained, and you go through that process. Very interesting. Because, I know a little bit, not as much as you, but I know a little bit about it. That's got to be something... because I know you get excited about it.
It's so much fun. I do it for kicks and because I enjoy the dogs and working with them. But I train them in protection, obviously obedience too. We do a little bit of nose-related work like tracking or trying to find objects. And it's a lot of fun to become a team with a dog is kind of interesting, and you learn. Actually, I learned a lot about my own weaknesses working with a dog.
Really?
Yeah, basically, as a dog lover, as I think a lot of people are, we're kind of suckers, and we let them get away with murder. That comes back to bite you if you're not careful. Not necessarily literally, but sometimes literally comes back to bite you. You have to have, the dog has to understand that he's working for you and that he's not in charge.
Right.
And that's very important, and you have to be
the alpha, right?
You have to be the alpha dog. Now, once you understand what it takes, it's really not that, it's not as difficult. And it doesn't mean you have to be mean and certainly not abuse dogs. They just need to know that you're in charge and then obey what you say.
Not always easy, is it?
No, but they actually, the dogs that I deal with, I have 2 German Shepherds. And those kind of dogs have been bred for a long time to take instruction from a handler.
Mm-hmm.
So they actually thrive on being commanded to do things. You're not really forcing them. You're working with what they come through selective breeding and through nature. They come that way, and you just have to hone it.
Interesting. So back to now, do you like being called an attorney or a lawyer?
I usually say neither. I usually say that I am one on TV. I guess I would say I'm a lawyer is probably what I would say if someone asks me, what do you do for a living?
Do you enjoy that? Do you enjoy being a lawyer? I know you're in it because you're kind of like you said, once I learn how to sit, I'm going to sit in that position and da-da-da-da. Is it something that you're passionate about, you dig in, or give me some insight?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't necessarily identify myself as a lawyer unless I'm asked to. In other words, I'm not hung up on the title so much, but I do enjoy the work. Probably the best thing I did as an immigrant to America is going to law school. After that is when I finally understood how America works. It was sort of one of those like light bulb moments. And I think, and as you work in it, it sharpens the mind. I have kind of a stubborn mind, and it could easily sway down and go my own path off the beaten path.
Right.
And so it's good to work with the brain to kind of keep it in check and hopefully keep control of my own less good parts that could take me down a different path. And what is interesting is in this job I have a fair amount of freedom, and it involves both hands-on stuff and also thinking and philosophizing. So it's both hands-on when you get down and dirty and looking at reading documents, but then every once in a while you got to pause and think philosophically, what's going on here, and what are the strengths and what are the weaknesses, and how do we attack this little by little?
Sure. Now, you are an entrepreneur. You have your own practice. Why did you decide to do that versus just getting into a big giant law firm and be one of the pawns of a firm?
Well, I did that for a while, and it was good in terms of that's where I really got to start and learned the trade. And so there were some good aspects that I got involved with cases that I would have never gotten a hold of if I just hung up my own shingle. I enjoyed being with a group of other people because you could always bounce ideas, and you would have someone in the firm who had been there before and done that. So you'd go and get advice from them, and I really enjoyed that part. There are other parts of being in a company or in a firm that are not so positive, and that is that you have less freedom. They tell you how much vacation and so forth you can take. So after I'd been with that firm for I think about 5 years, I decided that I wanted to take it in a different route and do my own thing, have my own firm, and I got more freedom. And I was fortunate that I was still plugged in to get some interesting cases. And I really owe a lot to having been in that firm, but I really like being on my own right now. There's no politics, there's no backstabbing, there's no one trying to take credit for what you did. Right. Not that there was that much in that firm, actually, so I'm not bad-mouthing them. I think, but in general, if you look at bureaucracies,
sure,
it can get political if there are 2 or 3 people.
In anything.
Yes.
In anything. Is there a particular entrepreneur or mentor or attorney, a lawyer, or anyone that you kind of look at and say, man, if I could do half of what that person does, I'd be successful? Is there someone you look up to like that?
I think there are several. I have a lot of people that I admire their legal abilities. Some of them are sort of reasonable, successful. In other words, they're not necessarily world famous or not necessarily super famous even in Phoenix, but they are the go-to people in certain cases. And I admire that because it's the result of a dogged dedication to learn the ins and outs of a particular part of the law, and it pays off. I think what I'm working towards is to be that guy that people call if they did something that they regret. That was what I hope to accomplish, and I see that I'm not in a hurry to get there necessarily. I think when the time is right, it'll happen.
Sure.
But that's what I'm working towards, to be ready that if people get charged with something serious, I'll be one of the top people they call.
What advice would you give to a young entrepreneur, or an entrepreneur in general? I mean, older people can get into being an entrepreneur. What advice would you give to an entrepreneur?
Pursue something they're passionate about,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a lot of work involved. And I think what I've found in the law is that there's a little bit of a conflict between practicing law
Mm-hmm.
and marketing and expanding into, like, in a business way,
Mhm.
because both of them are jealous mistresses. Both being an entrepreneur and being a lawyer can take up all the time you have and then some.
I bet.
So I think ideally in what I do, the best thing to do would be to be a two-man team where one is the entrepreneur and one is the lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
Because for me, that's the tension. What do? Do I go out and market myself, or do I read all the stuff that I got from the prosecutor?
You got many hats to wear.
Yes.
So your advice to an entrepreneur is basically find what you do it well, and move it forward.
Exactly. And look at professionals, actually, such as yourself. Look at people who have been there, done that in marketing. Learn from them, pay them to help you out. I really think that's the key, especially in today's world. Things are moving so fast in almost all areas of business, with how marketing is evolving. To try to come in with no experience in marketing and think that you can sort it out on the fly is, I think, a dead-end street.
Right. Now, you did mention that one of the things you want to become is that go-to person, the person that people look up to and that come to you for help, advice, things like that. What other goals do you have for you and your practice in the next 3 to 5 years?
I think of myself as a blade's edge that needs to be constantly honed and sharpened, and that I'm never done learning. It's not like I am 5 years or 10 years away from knowing everything. The more I learn, the more I realize how little I know, and so it's constantly a battle of learning new things, coming up with taking the experiences you have and applying them in the next case, and looking at things with an open mind all the time, which can be difficult, and just like anything, whether you're an athlete or whether you're building a business, if you sell widgets, presumably you want to sell more widgets all the time. There isn't the optimum number of widgets at which point you will be happy and kind of rest on your laurels.
Right.
You got to just keep going, and I think lawyering is a little bit like mastering of any subject, like the old samurai, that when maybe he's old, so age-wise he's past his prime, but he knows all the moves and he can read the opponent.
Right.
That's really what it is about, to make up, so you don't waste any time or energy on something irrelevant, but grasping it right away, and then working it out. And I think also using the imagination. I think cases that I've had that look at first like, okay, this is what happened, because you read a police report. Then you interview the police officers or the law enforcement officers, and it kind of confirms the picture that they gave you in their reports. But then you speak with the clients and witnesses, and you come to the conclusion, oh my gosh, this is a mistake. There's a complete misunderstanding here. And realize, hey, so the cops aren't lying, and yet my client isn't lying. They're both of the positions are perfectly reasonable, and they're actually, if you look at it, they're completely understandable, and you can explain, hey, this is where the misunderstanding took place, and this is why my client's not guilty. And to get to that point, that's kind of where you go, aha. In other words, you second guess what people did at some other time in some other place. And you come to a conclusion where, in the cases where really, in my experience, both sides are well intended, that's one of the most fascinating and satisfying things to be able to get to, because I don't have to say that someone is lying.
Right.
You're really just explaining it. And because often there is no evidence of anyone lying, and quite truthfully, there's probably more incentive for someone accused of a crime to try to lie their way out of it. There's not much money in trying to lie on the other end, in the end.
Sure.
But I have seen lots of misunderstandings and misinterpretations, and when you can show that and have people believe it, such as a prosecutor or even the cops, when after a trial or a hearing, like a hearing where I accused them of violating my client's constitutional rights, which is that's a bold accusation. But then I also say in the motion, look, clearly the officer made a good faith mistake here, right? And the judge says, aha, well, yeah, I think, well, the case you're citing is controlling, so I think I have to dismiss the charges. And the officer comes and shakes your hand and says, you learn something new every day. That's kind of like, whoa, because it kind of goes against the grain of, I think, what most people think goes on in a criminal case.
Sure, there's a winner, there's a loser,
Yeah.
not a win-win or
Exactly.
something like that.
Yeah.
Right. Magnus, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Joe. I enjoyed
You're
it.
so welcome. I'm Joe Hicks, and this is Magnus Eriksson. This to your success. Until we see you next time, take care.
Have you ever felt?
Are you listening? Damn. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You'll never have the sacred stone.
Oh, this you crazy mother.